You probably know that BCG stands for Boston Consulting Group and that they're one of the top management consulting firms in the world. But did you know that every year, BCG gets over 200,000 applicants and yet they only take around 2,000? This means their acceptance rate is less than 1%, making it more selective and more competitive than Harvard and MIT. And today, we'll show you how you can be that 1% and beat 99% of all other applicants. Hey Keeners, welcome back to the channel. My name is Gary and today I'm joined by Kelly, who has been at BCG since 2018 and has interviewed hundreds of candidates over her 6 years at the firm. In this video, we will cover how Kelly got into BCG herself, and if you make it to the end of this video, insider tips on what BCG really looks for in candidates. Make sure to like and subscribe, and let's get into it. The consulting recruitment process can essentially be broken down into 4 steps: resume, networking, case prep, and the actual interview. Let's begin with the resume.
Quick disclaimer before we get started.
Can you walk us through the resume that you used to get into BCG?
Yeah, of course. So I'd say it's a pretty standard resume, but having Gomi on the resume, again, tremendously helpful. There's so much weight on the firm and your role. So having GS as my internship, greatly helpful. The other things that help differentiate it are I have strong leadership experiences. I show good analytical capabilities through, for instance, working with Excel VBA even, automating reports and projects. I do have good academic achievement, even though my GPA is not there. You can see from the scholarships and other competitions and other awards.
What was your GPA?
At the time, 86 to 88%.
Do you have any tips or advice on, how do you craft the best resume for BCG?
One big tip I would have for any resume, not just for BCG, is be more specific. Many people write things like, I conducted analysis or I optimized operations. But what analysis did you do, right? Like what analysis is it? How did you do it? What are you working with? You optimize operations, like what operations are you optimizing? Like what did you do, right?
Yeah, exactly. Your bullet points need to be very specific. And to help you guys out, I've included a copy of Kelly's resume in the description below. So make sure to check that out if you're interested. In the meantime, let's move on to step 2, which is networking. According to Kelly, instead of networking with random people at the firm, you need to be very strategic and target individuals in positions of power who can actually get you an interview.
There are definitely people who will have more of an impact than others when it comes to funneling your resume through to get you the interview. And recruitment captain would be one of them, as well as anyone on the recruiting team. If your school is a target school, then what could happen is that there's a recruiting team who is responsible for reviewing your resume. Like they're the ones going on campus and engaging with you. And they'll decide and discuss as a team along with other people, will your resume make it past the screening round? Every single office is gonna look different.
Yeah.
But that could happen. And if that's the case, then yeah, you'd wanna speak to people on that team.
And like what kind of power do these people have in the process?
They can say, hey, as we're looking through their resumes, this candidate is really good. I spoke with them. They seem really professional, competent. And I think that they'd be a really good fit. Like we did a vibe check.
And like, what are your advice for students who are recruiting for BCG?
Quality is really important. Keep in mind, this is not just for recruiting for BCG. I will say this advice for everyone just networking generally. There are 3 goals of networking that I like to say. One is you want to learn about that person, their role, their firm, their industry. Yes, you want to learn from them. The other 2 goals that many people don't nearly put as much focus and emphasis on, but they're the ones that will actually move the needle for you. One is you want to make a really freaking good positive impression. And you can do that by asking really thoughtful questions, by doing a lot of research, by showing your perspectives. You want them to walk away thinking, hey, I can see this person on my team. And then the third one is like, are you driving towards next steps? Like, are you thinking in advance, what would I want to ask of this person, whether it's a referral to the job, whether it's a referral to other people, and are you communicating it in the right way? And maybe you're not asking for anything, but you just want to keep in touch and you want to just be a bit more strategic about these 2 other goals before you go in.
Isn't that so interesting to know? Anyways, let's move on to step 3, which is case prep. Arguably the most challenging and most unique aspect of consulting interviews. How did you approach case prep for BCG?
What I did was I read through a lot of cases, both the solutions as well as the case prompts. I try to brainstorm some solutions too, in addition to doing actual full-on mocks with people and with myself on webcam. I would record myself on webcam, watch it, cringe so much, feel like I want to die, but I would still do that. I read a lot about industries and businesses and how they work. And then my notes, I think, really helped differentiate me and help me do well because I took really thorough notes on the different types of potential challenges, the solutions, the key considerations, the risk, the action plan, all like types of analysis that you would do, how I would ask a question and frame it. So I took a lot of notes on everything, and that was really helpful.
And what is your best advice for students who are approaching case prep?
Please make sure that you read up on how different industries work. You might get a case on something like the airline industry, right? Or within finance, you might be asked about payments like credit cards. And if you don't know anything, it is really hard for you to come up with a really solid structure and come up with really good insights.
Common sense is not enough.
Sometimes it is, and sometimes things are a bit less intuitive. You want to be the best candidate, like you want to get hired, right? So if you can have more than just common sense guide you and differentiate you, then please do that, right? Basically, like whatever it will take for you to stand out more versus everyone else, you need to do that.
And now we have the last step, which is the interview itself. Were there like any shocking or like unexpected moments during your interview?
Yeah, so during my final round, case one, my interviewer, she looked at me, she's like, can you pretend that this is a client meeting? And I was like, okay, I guess we're pretending like it's a client meeting. So I didn't write anything during that entire interview because I thought like it's going to be so awkward, right? Like if I'm talking to a client and I'm like, wait, hang on, let me take a moment to structure my thoughts. Client, please stop. So I didn't write anything and I just talked.
Wait, I'm so confused. Why was that not like expected?
Because usually in the case, like you get a prompt, right? You ask some clarifying questions, you write your structure out, you might do some math, do some graphs, like do some drawing, like but you'll like do all of that. And these interviews were all in person too, by the way. It's not like nowadays like you just do this stuff on Zoom or like you just verbally walk through. But yeah, usually you have pen and paper and you write out your structure, you draw, you show the interviewer, you're like, this is like my structure, these are my buckets. Like you do the math, you're like doing it like just then and there.
So you just did everything in your head.
Yeah, luckily there was no math, but that would be hard. Like if I couldn't write anything out for math, that would be quite challenging. But I just did everything in my head because we just had a conversation in the end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so did she ask that at the beginning of the interview?
Yeah, exactly. At the beginning, she's like, hey, pretend this is a client meeting. So then the traditional like clarifying questions, structuring, right? Going through the case, looking at exhibits, scrapped all of that.
And how did you feel when you got the offer?
It was insane because they took a bit of time to call me and I thought I didn't get the job. So I don't know. I was in Ecuador at the time. I was on Monkey Beach and my signal was bad. I was stressed out about it all weekend, missed the call. And then on this Monkey Beach, while I'm looking at these monkeys running, I got the call and it was insane.
Looking back, what are the biggest things that made you stand out in this process?
I think having ability to draw really strong connections and strong insights throughout the case. I think having good industry and business knowledge and then calling out a lot of these like above and beyond differentiated statements like what will stakeholders think about this? If I had this data, I would do this kind of analysis. I know we don't have it, but this is what I would do. These are my ideas. And I think out of these, this one's probably more likely because of X, Y, Z. This one's probably less likely.
Okay, so that was Kelly's experience getting into BCG as a candidate herself. But now that she's been working at the firm for over 6 years and has interviewed hundreds of candidates, she has a whole new perspective on recruitment and what BCG really looks for in candidates. So let's see what your case interviewer is thinking during the interview and how you can impress them during the process. So I wanted to ask you, like, how does recruitment at BCG work from the inside?
Depends on the office, but for school, for instance, we might go to a target school and then we'll have these info sessions. And then people can engage with us, talk to us, do coffee chats and everything. They apply, their resumes are reviewed by typically a group of people, and then they decide which resumes make it to the interview round. You'll do the interviews, first round, 2 interviews, second round, next 2. I heard that for internships, there might be only 2 interviews, like 1 round, 2 interviews, but it depends.
Yeah. Do you remember any like particularly impressive or memorable candidates over the years that you've interviewed?
Not specific candidates, but the people who do well, or they do some of the things that I described, which is like very strong at drawing insights, very good at progressing the case forward and forming hypotheses, communicating, very professional. It's not like, oh wow, there's like one super eureka moment where I'm like, oh gosh, like this person is insane, right? It's like overall, throughout all these different dimensions, are they scoring very high across all these dimensions and being very robust overall?
What are some common mistakes that you see people make during BCG interviews?
Yeah, probably the opposite of some of the things I described, like being too vague, calling out only what's more obvious and not thinking between the lines. Not being practical, right? Like, oh my gosh, there's an issue with manufacturing. Let's just invest in more equipment and we'll solve it. Like wait, pause. Like, what equipment are we investing in? Why do we need to invest in equipment? Or like, oh, let's just throw AI at it. It's like, okay, wait, what AI are we throwing at this, right? Yeah. But you'd be surprised at how many people just throw things like that. You need to think of what you can say that other people will not, that are still very relevant for the case. Because you want to stand out. If you just look at a graph and you see numbers going up, you're like, oh, revenues are increasing. Yes, but everyone will know that, right? You can't only say that. Ultimately, you are being hired to help companies think of things that they are not able to think of currently. And so in the case, you also need to help think of things that are not so obvious.
Do you think it just comes naturally with practice?
For me, some of these things I intuitively kind of get. Like, it just makes sense to me. Kind of like solving a puzzle or like, you know, being like an FBI, right? Like you're looking at all the clues and you're trying to investigate this case and you're trying to draw these like cool insights. Like, oh wait, this happened. Oh my God, but there's that other clue that like indicates this, right? Like it's a little bit like that in a way. And you can definitely get much better at that with practice too.
If you had to boil it down, what is the one thing that can make someone stand out during their recruitment process for BCG?
Every time we engage with you, it needs to feel like we can see you as a teammate. Like it needs to feel like, hey, I could trust this person, or this person seems like they have potential to be on my team, to work with me and be able to carry their weight on a team.
And why is that?
Because that's ultimately what we're looking for. Like as we're evaluating candidates, will we hire you? It's like based on our interactions with you and everything. Gary, like this whole podcast, it was so seamless. The communication was great. Like you're so like seamless. All the pre-planning, like this is all amazing, right? Like that's the kind of feeling that candidates also need to give as we're engaging with them.
And how do you come across as being a team player and someone who can actually work at the firm?
In communications, just social engagements, right? Are you being thoughtful? Are you someone who I feel like is considerate? Are you professional, right? Are you proactive? Right? Like, are you sending me the calendar invites and being respectful of my time and being very responsive and all of that? During the interview, it's like, are you able to demonstrate strong analytical thinking, being insights driven, all the things I just talked about? Looking at your non-interview or non-social or communication things, do you have a strong resume? Are your grades strong? Like, has your school kind of vetted that for us through the classes you're taking?
Okay, let's play a bonus segment, rapid fire, true or false. I'm so excited for this. Okay, starting off, does BCG only hire from Ivy League?
No, not only. Many, but not only.
What do you think is like the percentage breakdown?
Very hard to say, but many.
Many, okay. Would you say it's a lot easier to get into MBB or BCG if you go to like an Ivy League target school?
I think so, if you're from a target school.
And what are some ways to get into BCG if you're not from like an Ivy League or top school? Like what do you have to do differently?
Ensure you land solid internship experience, keep your grades up, and network. If you are from a non-target but you have great internship experience and good grades, then you network, and I think you could still have a chance. You would still have a chance.
Yeah, your GPA doesn't matter if you network well.
False, your GPA matters.
I'm realizing like these are supposed to be rapid fire, but like I need you to give an explanation. So what GPA do you need then?
I would say ideally you're like top 10, top 20% of your class. Top 10 is great, but top 20%, you know, you still have a shot, I would say. If you are not even in the top 30 or top 40% of your class, it would be really hard because the spots are so limited, right? For these internships. If you like are taking the exact same classes as someone else and they are getting like 95s, but you're getting like 80s and you have similar attributes otherwise, it's like just really hard to justify giving one of the very, very few interview slots to you versus that other person.
It's better to lie during an interview than to admit you don't know the answer.
No lying, but I would say if you don't know the answer, you can say, this is what I think, right? This is how I might approach getting the right answer. And if I had this information, this is what I would do with it. And based on my current knowledge and based on my current assumptions of X, Y, Z, this is what I think the answer could be.
Okay. Before we wrap up this video, is there anything else that you want to say to people who are looking to recruit for BCG?
When it comes to a case interview, do take it very seriously. It's like funny because sometimes people put in so much work for networking and they're like polishing their resume X like 50 times.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my God, I finally got this interview. They're like, the interview's like in 2 weeks, but wait, like I have like this event, I have that event. Oh, like I don't have enough time to do all the mocks. And I'm like, no, like you can't let all your efforts go to waste.
Yeah, you're like, you need to like literally
This is actually the most critical.
lock in and like do it.
Yeah.
I mean, every step of the way is hard, but it's like once you get past the resume stage, it's all about like who you are as a person and like your skill set and stuff.
Yeah, nothing else matters. Like it's just how you perform during the interview.
Yeah.
So like if you have an interview and it's in 2 weeks and you really want the job and it really matters, you need to lock in hard for those 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't take it lightly.
Okay, that's it for this video. If you haven't already, make sure to give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. In the meantime, stay tuned for the next video because Kelly and I will be continuing our conversation about the 5 dark truths about consulting. It is such a fun episode. I'm literally editing it right now and I can't wait to show you guys. In the meantime, Keeners, I'll see you guys next week.